Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Filmographers Go to the Movies. I am Michael Moreci.
And I'm Keir Graff. We hope you've been following along with our first season, which is a film by film exploration of the entire oeuvre of Steven Soderbergh. Excuse me for using the word oeuvre. I apologize. Uh, but we like to take a little break once a month. We like to actually get out and see something that's brand new. And so this is our third installment of Filmographers Go to the Movies. Our first one, we went to see
Furiosa was one, and then we technically did not go to the movies for two because we watched Axel F, which is a Netflix movie that wasn't in the movie. So we did not go anywhere.
The filmographers stayed home for the movie in
Right.
that case.
Exactly.
At any rate, we have been very, very excited about the prospect of Alien Romulus, and so that's been on our calendar for months. I went out to see it last night in Missoula, Montana, where I'm currently visiting my family. Mike saw it just this morning where did you see it, Mike?
I saw it at the Lake Theater here in Oak Park.
Nice.
Yeah,
big screen.
It's pretty big. Yeah, it's not IMAX. I wanted to get an IMAX experience, but I couldn't swing it, unfortunately.
Understood. I was fortunate and surprised that Missoula now has an IMAX. I grew up here, but I hadn't been to that particular theater in quite a while, so it was pretty cool to see it in the big screen. So anyway, we're gonna talk about our quick reactions. This is not going to be the usual filmographers kind of heavily researched, very detailed, super informed take. This is going to be a little bit more just kind of our reactions and talking about whether we liked it or not. Please, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that now. Don't forget to like this post or this video if you enjoy it. And if you haven't checked out our regular podcast on your platform of choice, we're on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Please give us a listen, sample an episode that has your favorite Steven Soderbergh film, or maybe one you've never heard of. Check it out. Follow us along. We're halfway through our journey to watch or rewatch all of Steven Soderbergh's films. He's got two more coming out soon. So who knows? This podcast may be going on for quite a while.
Yeah.
But in the meantime,
Presence and Black Bag both are slated for next year. But in the meantime, yes, we just finished a special episode where we talked about how to find the movies that Steven Soderbergh made, which is sometimes challenging despite living in the digital streaming era. And before that, our last film that we had done was Che, parts 1 and 2. We're on a little bit of a hiatus right now as we take our summer breaks, but we'll be coming back in September with The Girlfriend Experience, which leads to The Informant and leads to a whole great streak of movies, Soderbergh movies from there.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to get back in and dig in. But first, let's talk about Alien Romulus. Mike, you just walked out of the theater, more or less. What did you think?
I liked it. I really did like it. I love that director, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Fede? I think it's Fede.
I would have guessed Fede or Fede, maybe.
It probably has a cool Latin pronunciation that's just not going to work.
Maybe a Fede.
Yeah. But anyway, I thought Don't Breathe, I think, is one of the. It's hard to call it a horror movie because it doesn't have any supernatural, and there's a whole argument about that, horror versus suspense. But if we're calling it horror or if we're calling it suspense, one of the best of the aughts. I love Don't Breathe. I think it's a masterpiece. I think Evil Dead is very close second. His remake is tremendous. It's not quite a remake, but like an extension of the original, if you will. Those two movies alone, like, really put him in a vaulted category for me. I think he's great. So when I heard he was doing an Alien movie, I was naturally very excited, and most of all delivered. Like, I thought the movie. It's weird. What I'm seeing is a surprise online is like a very much like love or hate and nowhere in the middle, but I'm kind of comfortably in the middle. I thought it was cool. It's hard to watch these movies, these franchise movies, especially when they're handed off to somebody else. Ridley has made every Alien movie has come from Ridley Scott so far. So it's the first Alien movie that's not Ridley. So it's interesting to see it passed off to someone else. And how are they going to weave their way through the universe, so to speak.
Mhm.
And I thought that Alvarez did a really interesting job placing it in a really interesting space because there's such this huge gap between Alien and Aliens. So you can
Mhm.
do something cool in there. So it's interesting that he took that. My issues that I had, and we'll get more into like how it fits into the universe. The weirdest thing that I had that I found problematic was the pacing.
Hmm.
Um, I found the first like 30 minutes to be too slow. Like
Huh.
we know where this movie is going. Like, I mean, essentially, Keir, have you seen Don't Breathe, by the way?
I have not,
Um,
which is something I need to rectify.
Definitely recommend it, given what I just said. But like Romulus is basically Don't Breathe in space. It's very much a very similar premise of poor people need to get out of a certain situation are gonna do something extreme to get out of this situation that they're in. Same setup of Romulus. Like they're never gonna get out of this like basically slave labor camp.
Yeah, yeah.
When Utani is set up on I forget the name of the planet. So they need to take this action to get off.
Okay.
It's a solid, great premise. I'm like, cool. It's just like Don't Breathe, which I love. Let's go. And it just kind of kept going. You care for the main character, Ray, I believe was her name, right?
I never remember any damn characters'
Yeah,
names.
it's Kaylee Spaney.
Yeah.
Her name, I believe, was Ray. You care for her. You care for her synthetic. I want to
I
say
prefer the
David.
term artificial person, Mike.
Oh, that's right. Oh God. Yes. You care enough to like, okay, this is enough to get me going. But then I felt like it just kept going with like, oh, here's a reason to care for this character, and here's a reason to care for this character.
Interesting.
And it just kept kind of going. I'm like, these people are fodder. I don't just feed them to the xenomorph, let's go. They're docking and then they're redocking. And it's
Yeah.
like we're walking through the ship and it's just kind of going where you're like, we know where this is headed. Let's get there.
Yeah.
Let's cut. I feel like, and maybe this is how I feel like I probably say this too often about modern movies. It could have been 15 minutes leaner.
Yeah.
But that was my biggest issue was like, there was a try-heartedness to it. Like really want you to like these characters
Yeah.
when you don't really need to, because we know who's going to make it and who's not. But otherwise, I thought there was a lot. I mean, the tremendous set pieces that were
Oh my
really
gosh.
visually stunning. I mean, I found the script was the problematic thing, but Alvarez's directing was tremendous.
Yeah.
I thought that was like A+ work. The characters were okay, like I like the leads. I didn't really
Yeah.
care about anybody else, even though despite him trying so hard.
Yeah.
But overall, I enjoyed it. There was some stuff that nagged at me about like how it fits into the larger universe and how it's like doing some things that's like the
Well, the
modern.
Alien movies have always been so maddeningly inconsistent compared to some other kind of franchises. Like not even just in terms of like the storytelling and the consistency of that, but like the technology. It's like some of the stuff that takes place earliest in the chronology of the show. Like the technology is much more sophisticated than the later ones, which wanted to lean more into the 70s, grunge in space kind of look or whatever. And so I do think like with the Alien films, you just have to kind of like take that with a grain of salt. But I hear you.
Yeah, but no, it's more like the winks and the nods, which I'm sure we'll talk about, which I was like, I can do without all of this. And I only caught a little bit. I have thoughts about that. But first,
Drinking bird. Yeah, we didn't need it.
didn't need it. But
Yeah.
here, overall, Bird's Eye, what were your thoughts?
I liked it a lot, and I think I liked it more than you, Gene. I so a little bit of background. To prepare for this, I rewatched all of the Alien movies except for the Alien Predator movies, which I don't really care about. But I rewatched all of the rest of them in chronological order, not the order they were made, but the order that they fit into the timeline. And so the most recent one I watched was Alien Resurrection, which I think is not good. And I think really, really suffers from the kind of, we've got a group of characters who are cannon fodder thing. I find, I forget his first name, but Jeunet, the guy from the filmmaking team of Jeunet and Caro, who made Amelie and all these kind of fun, whimsical movies. I think he was the utterly wrong choice for that film. But he's got this group of actors who are just acting so broadly. I didn't care about them in the least. And so I think that really informed my viewing of Alien Romulus, because I did respect the amount of time they took to make us care about them, because I had just seen an alien film, well, multiple alien films where I just didn't give a crap about any of the ensemble. And so where I can see your point that it does start off kind of slowly. I actually found myself, I went to see this with my son Cosmo, and I actually found myself saying to him, I wouldn't have minded 5 more minutes at the beginning, because I really loved that instead of the typical thing, like let's put them in some remote outpost or on a ship and then pick them off one by one. I love that they said it's a remote outpost, but it's an ecosystem. We've got a place where lots of people live and work, and we see this kind of, I don't know, it's very Blade Runner-y, but I really appreciated the attempt to kind of create a different world. And I also appreciated, of course, that they didn't bring Ripley back. They did bring another character back from an earlier film. But by the time we got where we were going, I understood the stakes for these characters. I liked most of them pretty well. I didn't fall in love with them, but I thought the leads were good. I thought Ray and her synthetic person were pretty compelling, and I also liked a lot what they did with him. I mean, this kind of AI thing where you reboot him and he becomes a different person now, causes some problems for the story. But I just found myself caring more and fully on board. And on top of that, I agree completely. I think it looked fantastic. The effects were so great as the ship is going down to the rings of the planet, looked magnificent. And I think my other favorite thing about it is just that, this is a horror film in space. And ever since Cameron made Aliens, some of the subsequent films leaned more into action film territory. And they've kind of been action films with a hint of horror. And to me, this one really felt scarier and more suspenseful and more horrific. And when we get to the new monster at the end of this one, it is really horrifying. And it's, so I feel like it kind of got back to the roots of the film as a scary movie.
That's a really good point. I agree. I like that. It's weird, like the xenomorph itself. The Alien franchise is always evolving in these different ways. Like you just watched, and I just watched recently Prometheus and Covenant. Rewatched them recently as well. I think they're really good movies. Like I think they're really interesting movies.
I agree.
Prometheus is, I would say, the weaker of the two. Like in the stuff that gets ridiculed doesn't bother me that much. What does bother me is that if you really, and I'm sure you noticed this too, especially they're fresh in your mind. Like if you really watch them, they don't make a lot of sense. Like in terms of like you alluded to it, like the consistency of like what is happening and the evolution of the xenomorph, like how this works, like. It doesn't make a ton of sense, and in a way that's okay. But like those were kind of, Prometheus was kind of a sci-fi movie with some horror in it. Covenant felt more horror-esque, but like there is this breadth to the Alien universe that's covering a lot of ground. I think that's a lot due in part to what Cameron did with Aliens, is because Aliens was so successful. So it became like this hybrid of like horror, action, a little bit of both. Like Alien 3 tries to do a little bit of both. I'm not somebody who goes and defends Alien 3. I think it's okay,
Same. Yeah, well, rewatching all of them, I was it just made me feel like, they're not designed to be binged. It really does. It's not a great experience rewatching them all in close proximity. I think it is much better to kind of wait years and build up some anticipation and then evaluate it. Because you watch them all together, there is the sameness, despite what everybody is trying to do differently with each of those films. There is the sameness in that, you get an ensemble together and you pick this, throw an increasing number of xenomorphs at them, get them picked off one by one. They try to blow it out into space. There's always some little like nod to the past. You have to, there's the guessing game, like who is going to be the artificial person, yada, yada, yada. But I was also really shocked at like how, I don't think most of them are very good. I mean, obviously the first one is a stone cold masterpiece. No question. And Aliens is a total fun roller coaster ride. It doesn't have nearly the artistry, but I do love that movie a lot. And it's also got memorable performances in it. It's really fun. Alien 3, kind of lame. Alien Resurrection, not good at all.
Bad,
The
bad.
the two prequels are, I think, both, as you say, both very interesting films and really hold up, I think, pretty well. And so I found myself thinking that this is actually one of the stronger entries in the franchise.
Yeah, and I guess my question for you, what becomes interesting then, like I said, this is the first movie that Ridley, I think, I mean, he was a producer, he's still part of it, but
Right.
it's the movie that he himself didn't make, didn't write, didn't direct. How how did you feel about the passing of the torch? Like I wonder, like, did Alvarez make it interesting enough? Did he do his own thing enough? Or is it too much like this is just kind of Alien again?
Right. I, for me, I thought he did do enough. I really appreciated, because ultimately this thing is always about this evil corporation that's constantly trying to, harvest this killing machine and make a bioweapon. And this is the movie, I think, that he really tried to pay that off, instead of just having, Wayland Yutani be this kind of, you know, evil, lurking, nefarious, faceless corporation, or maybe has a face in the in the person of Paul Reiser. uh, I thought that this is the time where we finally really, they've gone to great lengths to harvest the original, and they got blasted out into space. They show, the research. Here's what we're trying to do with it, and then the fact that they kind of tie it into some modern day concerns, like, what happens when a corporation gets to be too big? What happens when income inequality, like, puts, people who are ostensibly free workers basically into indentured servitude? That felt very timely to me. I appreciated that, I hadn't seen Don't Breathe, but I like that he brought his own concern as a director to it, and yet made what I think is very recognizably an Alien film that delivers all the things Alien fans want from it, which is, of course, face huggers, chest bursters, and the Queen's Nest, and just like there were so many like kind of touchstones from the classic Alien films, but it also just felt a little different. And I think, I love Sigourney Weaver as Ripley. I think she's just terrific. But, when they cloned her and brought her back, I mean, that was just the wrong move. Like, this is nice to have a fresh face. Obviously, now that I'm getting a little older, sometimes these actors all seem a little young and interchangeable to me. But I thought Kaylee Spaney was really solid, like really good. I thought that the actor who played her robot companion was really excellent. Um,
Yes.
I loved what they did with him. At first, I thought, oh, this makes me really uncomfortable, because it's kind of like, is he going to be like the magical Negro like stereotype? Like, he's just kind of slow but sweet. And then they did something really interesting with him, and he became such a powerful character. And then it also deepened the friendship and the bond between the two of them. And so I thought that ultimately worked really well, and was a nice update on, I mean, to me, you've got to measure everybody against Lance Henriksen, but I thought he was a really good character, and so the two of them were strong enough to carry it for me. I thought the other actors surrounding them were fine. I was a little puzzled by why this brother sister combo, one had an English accent and one didn't, but I guess that's just space. Uh, Accent
Yeah.
blind casting.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I do have something to say about the accents, about the sound, just sound in general. But I agree, and I'm always there's got to be a deeper reason here why the synthetics, the artificial person, whatever the case may be, are always the most interesting character, from like Rook, Bishop, David, Michael
Right.
Fassbender, and
Yes.
now
Yes.
like are the I mean, obviously Sigourney Weaver, Ripley, nothing tops that.
Yeah.
But after you go down from Ripley, it's kind of just like you're listing your favorite synthetics, and then there's kind of everybody else.
What were you
There's
going
new.
to say about the sound?
So the sound, this is the one thing it's not a fault of the movie, but I think the sound design of the sound, the effects, the crash, the action was great. I missed probably 30% of what people were saying. I thought
Yeah.
the sound mixing was unforgivably bad. It makes me mad just thinking of like how bad it was. Like, there is no reason why the mixing should be that bad. Where I don't know about, maybe it was the theater, but the theater I was in, like, generally has clear sound. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had this problem, and this is not a new concern that I'm bringing up. Like a lot of people have talked about like theatrical sound,
Yeah.
sound mixing, contemporary sound mixing, and the mixing of the vocal sound mixing on Romulus was awful. Like
I
it just
agree. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I kind of forgot to list that. But I had the same experience. I was in a totally different theater, big IMAX theater where they were cranking the sound, and I missed a ton of dialogue. That always drives me crazy. It's something that's been a gripe of mine, and as you say, many other people, but it's been a gripe of mine forever. I just think back to the films of the 1940s where you never missed a line. They made sure that, if you're going to write dialogue, make sure people can understand what the characters are saying. And there were a lot of lines that I guess I'll just shrug and go on. I a couple of times I literally wished I had a remote that I could back it up.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually thinking like, man, I wish, and they're making it more available, like some subtitles or wherever the case may be. I wish I had it because the sound mixing is terrible. Like
Yeah.
it's just, I said it before, but I just found it to be absolutely unforgivable that it's
Yeah.
that bad.
I
Should not
agree
be.
completely. So I have a question for you, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but in thinking about it's so interesting because a lot of people have remarked on this in long running science fiction franchises. What's hilarious is that, the prequels the technology ends up looking a lot more slick than the originals, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the Alien movies seem to have very little consistency on this. It seems to almost go more like with the fashion, I would say recently, including recent Star Wars films, of trying to make new science fiction films look more like old science fiction films because we like that kind of roughed up human look rather than the shiny CGI of the Star Wars prequels. The Alien prequels look cleaner and sharper than this one does. And this one takes place much later. Does that bother you at all when you're watching movies like this, or do you just take each movie as it comes?
Well, first, I'm going to answer that because it's a great question. First, I have to correct myself. I don't know why I said this is the first movie that Ridley Scott. I don't know why I said that because this is not the first movie that Ridley Scott did. First Alien movie. There's been two other. I push Alien 3 and Resurrection, so I push it out the airlock, and I forget that other people were involved in those two movies. So wow, I'm glad I'm able to correct myself midstream because I don't
Right.
know why. Yeah, it was
Fincher did
the
number three, and Jeunet did Resurrection, but
and the
Scott
Alien
has
version.
been pretty hands on in a lot of these.
Yeah, and he still is now. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like my mistake. I'm glad to correct that. But yeah, it's. I think your question leads into a larger question about like what's happening about these like conversations about like fan service. Like, are you just making it like look like Alien to be like, hey, remember Alien? But I take it as it comes. Like, I get it. Like Prometheus looks different. Covenant looks a little grungier because they're on that planet and they're kind of just locked into this one place. But Prometheus definitely is, if I'm remembering, the slickest looking of the bunch, and that's the earliest in the timeline.
Yes, I think that's right.
But it's funny because like when people make that thing, and I've seen that argument that like, oh geez, and there's plenty of fan callback, but I don't know that the design is a callback. I think it's just looking like, I mean, it's literally the ship. It's the place that Alien took place. It's the setting. Like,
Yeah.
so what else is this supposed to look like? And I've
Yeah.
seen people gripe about this, that like, but that was the technology of the ship, whatever era that's in, they're staying true to the fabric of the
Right.
universe of that time, of that location of the universe, I guess you can say. I don't know how
Right.
vast the physical alien universe is,
Yeah.
vary from what we understand. But like, I just feel like it's just being consistent more
Mhm.
than it's being like a wink or a nod. Like some things are like the drinking bird is like, remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Like that stuff. Yes.
That
But
was
like
awesome.
that was, yeah. But but the design of the ship I thought was cool. Like when you first get that shot, you're coming in the opening of the movie, you're coming from space, you're coming in, you're zooming in, and you see the first interior look of the ship, and it's got like these cords, and it looks like an old Atari in there and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this looks cool. This looks
Yeah.
really cool. Someone's being mindful of connecting
Yeah.
these dots. I don't know. I didn't mind. Did you?
No, although I do find myself taken momentarily out of the movie with things like, so like on the mining planet, the technology looks so old and so, again, like when you think back to the prequels where they've got this, like med bay that is like can heal people magically. And then here we are far into the future and in the alien world, and then it looks like everything's push button, things make clicking whirring noises, and the video screens are so low res, they're like from the 80s almost. That always makes me think like, well, I guess we're supposed to expect or accept rather that it's this outpost where they're going to send their worst tech and all that stuff. And but at the same time, I just kind of don't buy it, because it seems like if you're a mining company that's outfitting a new planet, you're going to send whatever is currently being manufactured. So stuff like that kind of makes me. I honestly prefer the way it looks. I like this. I love the design in this film throughout. I just loved it. I love the way it looked inside and outside the ships. I loved the colony. I mean, it was very Blade Runner-y. I thought I have no problems with that, but it is just an interesting thing to me that, like, I do think that, I mean, maybe we watch too many damn movies. I just find myself kind of momentarily coming out of it the same way that maybe it brings me out when there's an English accent, you know, in a surprising place, we'll just say. But I don't necessarily know I would want Alvarez to make a different choice, because he made a great looking film. But it's kind of hilarious when you watch the Alien movies in order in a condensed time span. You're just like, man, this is all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is. I mean, like, even like, look at, I'm not going to spoil this, but like you said, there's the machine that you just get in and it diagnoses you and zap, like
Yeah.
where Romulus healing yourself is a lot more extreme. The
Right.
lengths
And
for the woman, the pregnant woman.
yeah. And in one of the opening scenes of the uh, Resurrection, which takes place 200 years into the future or whatever, you got Brad Dourif removing a specimen using like, forceps, and he like uses an old fashioned scalpel to cut stuff. And you're like, what happened? Why did, and that
Yeah.
one is projected like, I mean, I know we're not talking about that movie, but like that one's supposedly so far, like Wayland Yutani doesn't even exist anymore. We're way in the future. So it's theoretically more high tech, but it's just like, well, this director prefers the look of metal instruments.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like Alien 3 has that autopsy scene. That's like, all those same instruments, and granted they're on this, the prison planet. So who knows what they have. And
Yeah.
you make a good argument, good point that like the beginning of Romulus, they're on the colony. They're have-nots. So that maybe you can make the case like, hey, it's just what they got. So I kind of roll with it, but there's a really good point there. But I guess the question then, as wonder, like to you, is like, okay, how far, like Cameron's Aliens looks, I still feel like Cameron's Aliens can, like, it's longer in the future,
Mhm.
but I feel like it connects visually enough to Alien, like sort of like you get a sense that like, okay, these can work together.
Yeah.
He's doing enough of his own thing. Now, Alvarez has a distinct, I guess you can say, problem in a way, because like he's only, it's right around the time of Alien. So like how much the criticism I've seen that's getting lobbed at the movie, I guess you can say, is that like he doesn't do enough of his own thing. But like, I don't really know. There's that fine line. I guess the question I'm getting to is about fan service, as people are saying. Like someone call it the Rogue One of Aliens, which maybe,
A little harsh, but not totally.
well, I do have something to say about that and that in general. But like, I guess the question is like, what else could he have done? Like, I just don't know. I feel like Prometheus and Covenant like got hit hard for being like these weird, very weird movies.
Yeah.
Cerebral, it's got a whole weird thing going on.
Yeah.
I mean, Resurrection's just bad. Three has its own very storied history. Like, where else can you go? Like, I feel like he chose the right vein to get into because Alien and Aliens are the two best. Scott's and Cameron's are the two best. So it's like, okay, let's just go in between that and see what we can find.
Yeah. I think that there's been such a gap between this and the last one that this isn't really a reboot. It's interesting because, yeah, I think that Alvarez would have been dinged had he gone too far off the course of what had come before, because people do want certain things from these movies. I to me, again, like, I feel like it delivered the thrills of the original, but updated with better special effects, because better special effects are available now. That sound was the mail arriving. It's a good old fashioned mail slot here. But had he gone more bold and tried to make it more his own, I think like the loyalists would have probably dinged him harder for that. To me, he kind of threaded the needle. I think it felt enough like an Alien film with enough new stuff. The Rogue One comment makes me laugh. And like, I think Ridley Scott, if anybody's earned the right to experiment with it, it was him. And I think it's too bad people didn't like those more, because I think those are very interesting films.
Yeah, I would have loved. I know he had, if I'm not mistaken, two more, perhaps even three, Tim being Ridley Scott planned after
Yeah.
Covenant. But Covenant performed. I don't think it performed poorly, but I don't think it did well enough.
Yeah.
And the growing, sentiment where people were not liking these movies. They're
Yeah.
vocal enough that they're being ridiculed enough that I don't think anyone wanted to roll the dice on finishing from Covenant.
Yeah.
So what do you get? Okay, when you go back to basics, you go back to this, and that seems to be where when you get your wrist slapped for taking the chance. Okay, well then the chance goes away, the riskiness goes away.
Yeah.
So Romulus may not be the riskiest movie. I'm interested to see where he goes next. Like, I feel like they've laid an interesting groundwork. Like,
Mhm.
there's always for a sequel, but like sometimes I wonder though, like, is it when you have these like fan conversations, and like you said, the loyalists, is it a movie problem, or is it a you problem? Because like because let me tell you, and I'm sure you're with me, and you just watched these movies.
Yeah.
I have seen Alien and Aliens, I don't know how many times, like
Yeah.
many. And I am sure that I'm sure there's a ton of references. As a matter of fact, until you mentioned the drinking bird, I forgot. I totally
Yeah.
forgot about it.
Yeah.
We've seen it now in Romulus, but I didn't think it when I watched it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't obsess over the details. Like, I am just
Yeah.
along for the ride happily. And I'm not like, ooh, that line, oh, that. I mean, yes, the one line that we all know, I won't spoil it. I wish he would have showed a lot more restraint
Yeah. Yeah.
and have done that.
Yeah.
Um, but other than the big one like that, and having a surprise character return, like the minutia of like the callbacks, the Easter
Yeah.
eggs as they're called. Like, I don't pick up on them. Like, I don't obsess over it. I don't watch these movies 700 times.
Yeah.
Like, so if you are picking up every single detail, like, whose fault is that? Like, you're not supposed to watch these movies that much. Like,
I love that question, Mike. Sometimes I think we have to recognize it's an us problem. I mean, we live in a very self-centered age, and people expect films to be made for them personally, and they feel offended when the film was not made for them and did not deliver all the things they expected. And the super fans of any franchise expect, this. Some people love all that fan service, some people don't. I definitely don't. But I wish there was more of an openness to saying, I'm curious what this director will do with the franchise, and then having a civil conversation, just as you and I are doing, about, how that came off or didn't come off. And I have to say, like, ultimately just bringing it back all the way. And I know we're just over half an hour here, but like, Ultimately, did I have a really enjoyable film watching experience? I did. I went with my son to the movie. I got popcorn and soda, and I reclined in my chair at the IMAX, and I loved it. I marveled at the spectacle. I loved the look and the special effects. That I got scared a couple times because there are some good not only jump scares, but just some of the suspenseful sequences are the best things we've seen since the first couple movies, I would say.
Yeah, there's two set pieces that I want to spoil, but there's two set pieces that are really good, like really good, really inventive, like really creative. Like that's the thing.
Yes.
Like it took the alien stuff, Alien being the first movie, took the alien stuff, and like yeah, there's a lot of similarities. There's a ton of overlap, but like there's some really inventive stuff in there too.
Absolutely. And I thought too, just that the talking about the script, there was the kind of the consequences and the cause and effect in the script, I would say is generally very strong because sometimes these movies just kind of somebody, gets picked up out of space and brought onto a spaceship, and then they are in this new situation, or they crash land and then they're in this new situation. This was great because, again, I don't want to give any spoilers because this movie is brand new, but our main group of characters goes looking for something, and that thing they want causes the problem in a very direct and interesting way. And and choices lead to other problems. And, it seems so simple, but, as writers, we appreciate a good story, this leads to that. And so often I just feel like you see these big budget Hollywood films where it's just kind of a series of events. And that's the hallmark of bad writing. And I do think that this script, well, I don't think it was an amazing script. I think the dialogue was much better than the last couple of Alien movies, for sure. It's still not it's not amazing dialogue. It's good. The script is not amazing, but it's pretty good. And then coupled with Alvarez's direction, I think it turns into what I found to be a really terrifically enjoyable film. And I predict it's going to do pretty well. I think it should.
Yeah, I think it is going to do really well, and I hope it does really well. And I think you're right. I mean, that makes me like it a little bit more. That the beginning sequence, it's good to see the problems that they encounter are products of their own choice. And in matter of fact, Ray says that. So it's just she's the guy that her seemed like her former flame was like, this is my fault. And she's like, yeah, it is. It's our fault. It's all of our fault. We should have done this.
Yeah.
It was such a great, honest acknowledgement, because usually you're right. Usually it's like we crashed land and
Yeah.
something bad, and it just happened to be bad luck. Where this is a bad decision, I mean, not necessarily a bad decision because it does also feel like a necessary decision, which makes it gives a little bit of complexity. I wish they would have kept that though, a little bit, them still being like, we've got to get to this planet. We can't go back. We're slaves if we go. We're going to die on this ship potentially. Our only chance is to get to that planet that we needed to go to. Because that kind of just got lost. It just turns into a basic survival story.
Yeah.
And I would still mention that drive to be we have to get to this planet.
Yeah.
We have a goal. We have stakes that we're dead no matter what if we don't get there.
Yeah.
That would have been just a little nice if they retained that.
That's an excellent point. Definitely. But yeah, it was, instead of being the thing where somebody just kind of crash lands into a wasp's nest or whatever, I mean, it was like a choice they made and that leads them into danger. And that I think is, that's a hallmark of a stronger story when somebody makes a choice that takes them into danger. And this one is particularly strong because it's very unwitting.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I mean, I know we're going to wrap up probably, but one thing I want to say is that seeing this on the big screen, and like we said, it looks great. It really makes me wish, speaking of Alien versus Predator, that Prey would have gotten a big screen release. It feels like, and seeing that Romulus, I think is going to be very successful. I think Prey could have been maybe not as successful because it's not as big of a movie, but Prey I thought was excellent.
Yeah.
Such a missed opportunity. And it's also Fox, they made a decision just to more or less abandon it onto Hulu, where it became a success. And I think it's found a great following. And hopefully when they make a sequel, and I believe they are, it does find life on the big screen because it deserves it. But it makes me really, really wish that we would have had it, that Prey had been given this opportunity, because I think it could have thrived.
No doubt. That would be a terrific theatrical experience.
Yeah,
Well, I could
absolutely.
talk about this for probably another hour, but we do try to keep these filmographers go to the movies episodes a little short. We don't go a ton longer in our regular podcast episodes. For those of you who haven't listened to the podcast, we try roughly to shoot for an hour, under an hour if we can, sometimes a few minutes over. Of course, if you're a Patreon subscriber, they get shorter because you don't have to listen to any ads, so that's a bonus. But yeah, any final thoughts on Alien Romulus, Mike, or should we wrap this one up?
That's it. I'm actually probably going to go catch it again after we've spoken, so you've convinced me to see it with, fresh eyes. I did like the experience. It deserves to be seen on the biggest screen possible. It looks great. It plays great on the big screen. And I'm glad it exists. And I hope everyone forgives me for flubbing the Alien. We're the filmographers, for God's sakes. I flubbed, like, Ridley Scott only directed like half of them. And I can't believe I said that. So please, everyone, forgive me. Don't take my movie viewing card away. My AMC Stubs membership, don't revoke it. Actually, you know what? Yeah.
That's fine. I can wait in line like everybody else. All
But
right.
yeah,
Well,
keep
if you
following up. Oh, sorry. Yeah, follow the show. Filmographerspodcast.com is our website. You can always find links to all the podcast services. We're on all of them. We have a new episode coming with the Girlfriend Experience, and we've got all the hits right now. We got episodes on Ocean's 11, Out of Sight, Aaron Brockovich, Traffic. It's all up there. Check us out. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe on your podcast of choice. It makes a huge difference. We really appreciate it. And thank you for watching, and go see Alien Romulus. It's worth checking out.
Absolutely. Go see Alien Romulus. And just a quick thanks, as always, to our producer, Kevin Lau, Gompson, who composes and plays our theme music on the show, and Cosmo Graff, who designed the Filmographers logo. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time at the movies.